Hello, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the latest in our series of webinars in our Practical People Management series. I'm Karen Gibb, one of the HR specialists in the Menzies People Solutions team, and I'm pleased to be joined this morning by Jo Olsen to talk about how to support our maternity returners. Thank you for joining me, Jo. Would you like to just say a little about yourself and what interests you in this topic with me today?
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, my name's Jo Olsen. I am a leadership coach and I specialise in helping create high performance cultures where both individuals and organisations can thrive together. So this is a really interesting topic for me because I believe, as a mum myself, and from the coaching clients I work with and the organisations I work with, I believe there is a lot more that can be done to really support returning parents back into the workplace, not just to get by, but to really thrive and be the best they can be.
Okay, I completely agree, Jo, and that's really why we wanted to do this today. What we're going to do is a little bit about the practicalities, the technicalities of returning to work. I'll do a little bit about that, but then what I really want to talk about is supporting the returner, what people, teams, and line managers can do to support them initially, and then in the longer term for really making them thrive and be successful. Um, I'm just going to say a little bit first about the fact that I probably will talk quite a bit about returning mums, but I think we both really recognise that parenthood is something that people come to from all sorts of different approaches, and we're talking about partners here. We're talking about those who've come to parenthood through adoption or surrogacy or whatever their journey might have been. I recognise very much that the impact of returning to work as a parent will affect, a wide range of different people. But today we're going to primarily, the terminology is going to be mums because they're the ones who have the longest away from work. And I think if you're a line manager listening to this, you're more likely to be dealing with a returning mum who's had a significant time away than anybody else. But just appreciate we understand this applies across the board. Jo, let's start a little bit with our sort of recollections of this situation. I think we've both got memories of the shock of returning to work as a new mum. How did you reflect on that when you were thinking about talking today?
It was a little while ago for me now. My children are 12 and 8. And I do remember very clearly not quite knowing what to expect and feeling that, this can be quite overwhelming. I want to be brilliant. I want to come back and, keep going and keep sort of performing, and everything's changed. And I remember clearly after my second baby coming back after 10 months and sitting in a meeting with the CEO and the MD and a couple of other senior people from the business. And they were firing all these names at me, and I was in a people role. They were firing all these names at me and were talking about different people from around the business. And I was thinking, I've got no idea who you're talking about. I really wish I had a list of names and photographs in front of me. And did I say, I'm really sorry, I've been out of the building for 10 months. You're going to have to slow down. I'm not clear on who we're talking about, which team, where do they fit. Instead, I'm smiling and nodding and acting like everything's fine because I didn't feel it was okay to say, sorry, I'm not following here. So, and that was a little while ago. And I think people are perhaps a little bit more accepting in 2023 that, people have undergone a big transition, and it's okay to forget people's names, and you can't be expected to turn up on your first day back and remember absolutely everything. However, I think there's still a lot that can be done to support people to feel confident in saying, this is what's going on for me, and make no apology about that.
Completely. Do you know, I mean, I do think we've moved on a lot, and we'll come to sort of some of the practicalities in a minute, and why the returning environment should be more welcoming now. But I still think I mean, it's a huge shock. In all honesty, you've got to adapt back to that business life, haven't you? You've got to have got yourself out of the house with matching shoes for a start. And the whole schedule, everything back at the workplace, the IT will have changed. A year is going to feel a long time to you, whereas everybody else has been there beavering away. They've forgotten half the things that have changed and happened, and you're desperately trying to slip in under the radar and kind of pretend you've never been away, and it is a whole new world. And I guess I'll touch on that very quickly first in terms of the practicalities. You know, for those line managers out there listening to this, you know, you probably said goodbye to your maternity team member. They've been away for a year, and you know, I hope you've stayed in touch, but they literally have come in. It's their first day. You really can help so much if you just think about some of those practicalities. You know, essentially treat them like a new starter without, you know, taking it to extremes. But there's probably a lot that's changed. There'll be some retraining that needs doing. There'll definitely be some familiarization around the people and the projects and clients and all of that kind of thing. And just take a little bit of time. And I hope you've also had a conversation around scheduling the work and the hours with a little bit of sympathy and understanding. You know, perhaps they've got a phased return, perhaps they're coming back part-time initially, or on shorter days, or something to make that adjustment a bit easier. And also working from home now, we're so good at that. If you can build that in around their childcare arrangements, and anything you can do to essentially ease that coming back in can make a really huge difference. And don't forget, you can have used some kit days, the keeping in touch days. So you can have invited them in for a management meeting or some retraining or familiarization. You can have kind of got them back involved. So I think there is a lot you can do, but be really understanding about how alien it's going to feel certainly for those first few weeks.
Yeah, and I think, you know, having a healthy dialogue between line manager, HR, of course, line manager and the returning parent is so important. Not making any assumptions, asking good questions. You know, what are you worried about? What's working? What's not? What can we do to support you? How has this week been? You know, what do you want to improve for next week? And that responsibility, yeah, the onus does sit with the employer to be really driving those conversations. Also for the returning parent, for them to speak up and ask for what they need, not like me 8 years ago where I sat there nodding. Yeah, there's a responsibility on both sides to create that dialogue and make sure that the things that need to be discussed are being discussed, and that there's flexibility built in as well, because, you know, we can plan to the best of our abilities, but knowing that we need a bit of flex because there will be some unexpected things to contend with along the way.
Yes, absolutely. I'll come back, Jo, in a minute, because I want to make the rest of the discussion around those conversations and what managers can do better to ask and listen, and obviously the coaching model that you use. But just another practicality, I think, from me in terms of kind of the scheduling. I think that you need to understand what the childcare arrangements are. You need to understand what the backup for the childcare is and how much support the person has. I think you need to be prepared that not everything will go smoothly. So there may be a need for them to leave them early. There may be a need for them to suddenly take some time away because the baby hasn't adjusted to nursery. They may, actually, this happened to me, they may have really not selected the best schedule for the right pattern to work long term. I went back for short hours, but every day initially. And that was not only disruptive in terms of travel time and all of those kind of things, but it wasn't very productive either. I was only there 4 hours a day, and inevitably somebody always wanted me outside of those hours, and I had to sit down and rescope that and talk about making my days full days. Now my employer was great and really open to that, so we made that change. But though in that initial period you don't get everything right, and to some extent some of the you're not in complete control, because you've got a little one and you've got childcare arrangements outside of the workplace as well, so scheduling can be very stressful.
Yeah, definitely. And scheduling, what is the shape of the working week, and what needs to happen to make that as successful as can be, and having good conversations around that, but also even down to a meeting level. I worked with one individual who was really assertive about managing expectations for what time she had to go. So, if she had a hard stop at 4 o'clock because she had to go and pick up her son from nursery, you go into a 3 o'clock meeting with her. At the start of the meeting, she'd say, this is what we want to get out of the meeting today. And just so everybody knows, I'm going to be leaving at 10 to 4 because I need to do nursery pickup.
Right.
So really proactive in terms of managing people's expectations in a controlled and professional way, that there was no apology and no guilt around that. Absolutely, that's how it should be.
Yeah, that's excellent, isn't it? And I think we're more open to that. I think we do understand the balance. I think we do understand that working parents can be highly productive. Part-time working can be really productive, very focused. And I do think it's also reliant on the working parent to say what they need and to be clear, and also to have that backup. It is very difficult if you don't have any other backup for your childcare. You need some help, so you need to think about that in preparing to return, I think. But let's talk a bit more. One other practicality, really, we help managers to plan for maternity. So we will meet the mum-to-be, we will plan out her entitlements and her leave and her return date and her pay and all those kinds of things. We don't tend to have some of these other conversations. We confirm her return date and back she comes, and we hope that the manager then takes her through that process and settles her back in. So tell me a little bit more about how we can get better at that.
Yeah, so absolutely, there is a role for employers to play in going a bit deeper than the basics of having a competitive maternity policy, which is, that's brilliant to start from there. But really thinking about what does an individual need to give them greater clarity and control over the situation. So maternity coaching programs can really support individuals to think about what it is they need up front, get better at communicating with their employer about what options they might want to explore, and then really when they come back into the workplace, it's different for everybody. Your sort of skills and development areas are going to be different to mine, are going to be different to the next person, and the beauty of having a tailored coaching program at an individual level is it can really play to their own strengths. So having a program that has a kick-off session before they go on maternity leave, to really look at what is it you're worried about before you're going off, and then identifying strategies to sort of work through their concerns. For some people it might be, I'm not sure how I should be involved in the recruitment process for my mat cover. So that might be a focus area. For the next person, it might be, how do I have the right conversations with my line manager and HR to think about the right options for me before I go off on maternity leave? Also, you know, having that one session before they go off on maternity leave is important, because it's an opportunity for the coach and the individual to really kickstart the coaching relationship before the chaos ensues,
Yeah.
and they build up that sense of rapport and trust before they go off. So absolutely having a check-in before they go off on maternity leave, and
Right.
then come back in and return to work. We would usually recommend having a session within their first week or two back in the
Right.
business, and that might include anything from, you know, how do I successfully manage my competing demands and get the balance right? How do I look after my own physical and mental health despite everything that's going on?
Yeah.
Boundaries do I need to have in place? How can I be more productive in
Mm.
that I do have? Um, you know, managing expectations of the people around me, my line manager, my team members, and you know, a lot of this work can be around building really positive relationships where there is that open dialogue that I keep coming back to.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of people are having guilt around, I feel guilty, I've left my child. There's that whole separation thing. They might not have been away from them
Yeah.
for a
Yeah.
significant time yet. So really working through that. Other people have guilt around, I've got to leave at 4 o'clock and I feel bad because my team are working on a big deliverable for tomorrow. So it's
Yeah.
how to sort of navigate those things in a way that works well for everybody.
Right.
And really just getting clear on what are the things that I need to have in place to create more positive outcomes for me in my work and in my life.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, just such good questions and such a good discussion to have. You know, I hope that happens more, perhaps than it used to. And certainly, none of those questions are difficult for managers to ask if they can create the environment and the trust with an employee where they can ask the question and then really listen and consider how they can support them. Really important, isn't it? And also, I think the thing is, you know, we've got really highly valuable employees here. We want them to return for the long term. We want their career development. We want their success. And parenthood's not going to go away. So this is now a moving feast. We might get them through those first few weeks, but we really want to plan for the future and build their success in long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And for employers, you know, there are a lot of wins up for grabs here. You know, it's productivity, engagement, it's holding on to your best people,
Absolutely.
a positive impact on your employer brand. So there are a lot of good reasons to really think about going beyond the
The
basics.
basics.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay, Joe, I think that's so interesting and just such a great direction to go in terms of supporting people coming back. I think, you know, it's the kind of, we'll do a couple of takeaways each, shall we? I think for me, it's asking and listening is really crucial as a line manager in this situation, with some patience and understanding, because this is a long-term process. That I think is really key for me, and giving them the opportunity not only to overcome that initial return, but to look to the future and get their careers really planned in, and the balance between work and home from that point on. How about you?
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Karen. And I think, you know, for me, from the individual's point of view, we're all different. We all need different things. It is overwhelming transitioning to being a parent, either for the
Yeah.
first time or as part of a growing family. So there is a lot that can be done to support returners
Mm.
and more. Um, from the employer's perspective, I know a lot of employers are sort of looking around, scratching their heads around how can we create more equal opportunities in the workplace, and what can we tangibly do rather than just talking about sort of targets. And, you know, if we've got 80% of the people sitting around the boardroom table are male,
Yeah.
then you're really looking at what part you can play, not just in supporting returning mums, but really investing in their progression paths. So that
Right.
saying this is more than just helping people get by. I'm really looking at how you can support them to return and continue on the trajectory that they were on before they became a parent.
Right.
And then the thing for me is a lot of businesses at the moment are thinking about budgets are tight. How can we make sure that where we are spending and investing in people's development, that it's done in a way that we can track results?
Yeah, get the return.
Absolutely. And it's worth bearing in mind that HR can really think about, okay, how can I measure the key sort of D&I factors related to this, and justify the investment in a parental transition coaching program. So looking at things like how confident is the individual feeling about their career progression, how individuals are rating their sort of work-life balance,
Yeah.
what extent the individual is feeling supported by their organisation. So
Yeah.
there are measures that we can track to support the case for investing in these kind of programs.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting, Jo. Very interesting. I think there's so much more we can do, and I think this is a really great way for businesses to think about a simple, practical, cost-effective way to support what is essentially a really valuable resource in the longer term. Look, we could talk about this a lot more, but I'm going to say thank you very much for joining me today, and I'm going to ask our marketing team just to add a couple of slides to the webinar for me at the end. So those of you listening, you'll see Jo and my contact details come up now, and you are welcome to contact us and continue this discussion and find out from us how we can support you and support your returning parents. And also, if you haven't joined our Menzies People Community Hub, you'll see there's a slide coming up with a QR code. Please access that to get the app on your phone. You can download all of our materials, lots of templates, all of our webinars, lots of really useful resources on there for line managers and people teams. So Jo, thanks again. Real pleasure today. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.